When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the best Catelyn POV chapter. Now, I don't think you guys are going to be surprised what it is. It's going to be the Red Wedding. I don't know, there's a couple debatable ones, but this to me is my favorite and or best chapter in the entire book series. So for me, it has to be the Red Wedding. There's some other great chapters. She has another top 10 chapter, in my opinion, being Renly's Peaches chapter. So that's kind of when Renly and Stannis had their little bickering. A lot of great stuff happened in that chapter. I've done a chapter review of not only that chapter, but also the Red Wedding. So before we get deeper into the Red Wedding and talk about why I think it is Catelyn's best POV chapter, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. Help the channel grow, reach, or peel out my latest content as well. Also, we're going to be going through all of the main POVs, and I'm going to be talking about what my favorite chapter or best chapter is for each one of them. So far, we've done Theon and Arya, so if you wanted to check out those will probably be on cards on the screen at right now. And also, let me know in the comments, what is your favorite Catelyn POV chapter? Is it something as simple like the Red Wedding like me? Is it something a little bit more different? I think Catelyn, looking at it from the first 3 books, is a top 3 to 4 POV. So I think she has a ton you could choose from. But getting into it. So the Red Wedding to me is Catelyn's best POV chapter based upon the fact that if we look at the starting of book 1 to now, the entire thing has been leading to this moment, right? And why I think this is even a better chapter is because of the chapters that come before it. The last Arya chapter and Catelyn chapter going into the Red Wedding, they literally both give us this uneasy feeling that continues to build. And it's something we see all throughout Catelyn's chapter, and especially the last chapter she has, where you kind of feel like something isn't right. And the reason I love this chapter, it's a culmination of everything that's happened in Catelyn's POVs, whether that be Robb marrying Jane, whether that being Catelyn setting Jaime free. This is the culmination of all the mistakes or things that have happened with her and Robb, and even Ned to a degree. And when you have that big of a moment, this is also the chapter that they're going to die in, it is almost impossible to put any other chapter in here, because if we look at the impact this has, this chapter sets in stone the rest of the plot lines. Sansa is going to be able to get out of King's Landing because of the Purple Wedding. And the Purple Wedding was never going to happen, really, until the war was kind of over. And the war is over kind of when the Starks die. That's how the Lannisters look at it. And this leads to Tyrion being imprisoned and then killing his father, Oberyn dying, Tywin dying. It sets in motion the rest of the story. Right? It impacts every single story going on. It deeply impacts Jon when he hears this news. The only real one it doesn't affect too much is Dany's plot, but Dany's plot doesn't really get affected by much, to be fair. But every single other character, right, is basically affected by this. Sansa, Arya, everyone, we're still feeling the ripple effects of the Red Wedding now. When you look at their theories out there, one that I agree with, the Red Wedding 2.0, that still comes out of, we're still thinking about the Red Wedding. Will there be some vengeance, some justice for what happened there, which there definitely will. We get Lady Stoneheart out of this event. So when you look at that, just the impact of this chapter on all the storylines in the next 2 books, and even the book it's in now, there's no other chapter that gets close. I think the only other chapters you could point to would be like Tywin's death, Ned's death, certain chapters like that, Battle of Blackwater. There's only so many really impactful chapters. Another one, Dany, when she brings the dragons back, basically, and kind of magic back into the world. Another one. There's not that many impactful chapters you can put on par with the Red Wedding. And when you you put that with the idea of how fantastic the writing is, where I'm going to put a card up on the screen because this is not going to be an in-depth analysis of the actual chapter. I have already done that If you want to check it out, it's probably one of my favorite videos on the channel. It'll be on the screen. But in this chapter, George takes us on such an emotional journey where we kind of end off, right, where Robb has this idea and plan that after the Red Wedding, or not after the Red Wedding, after this wedding, they're going to take their forces and they're going to go up north. They're going to take Moat Cailin. They're going to take back the north. There's already this idea that we know what the plan is. We know what Robb's going to do, okay? And also, there have been things in the past that have hinted on Robb's death, right? So Robb Stark's will, for instance. And we see all of these things where, yes, there's uneasiness there, but George is giving us an outlet to have hope where, yes, this whole plot going back up north is going to happen. And then we kind of, see a little bit more where we're like, okay, this is good. The wedding's going okay. Everybody seems like they're in good spirits, but there's still this hovering uneasiness there. Why aren't some people at this wedding that are Freys that liked Robb there? They're just not there. And you would think for the biggest wedding in probably Frey history, or one of them, with marrying into the Tullys, they are not here. And it makes you have that pause. There's other things that other chapters do to set this up as well. Grey Wind does not like the Freys, and basically attacks one. Or not really attacks one, but he kind of like makes the horse scared, so the horse then but it doesn't matter. Either way, Grey Wind doesn't like them. This leads then to Grey Wind not being at the feast. Something else that it's something subtle that on your first time reading through, maybe you don't think about it that much. You just kind of skim by it. And those are the things George does so well in this chapter and other chapters before it, where he subtly throws in these things that are foreshadowing the Red Wedding, but at the time, they don't seem like big deals. And we have all this stuff going on, and it kind of comes to the head, right, where the Red Wedding starts to happen, and you see your emotions just plummet, right, and everything's going wrong, and Catelyn's under this table, and she's injured, and we see some Northmen come in, and Catelyn's like, oh, thank God, somebody's going to rescue us, and us as the readers, we're thinking, please, dear God, thank God, somebody's coming in. And then you get the reveal that it's actually Roose Bolton and the Bolton forces, and they are actually flipping on Robb as well. Something, again, has been foreshadowed in other chapters, whether that be with Arya with Roose, or that be with Jaime and Brienne with Roose. All of this stuff has been foreshadowed. It's so well done that you don't see it coming necessarily on your first read or watching on the TV show. But when it happens, you're not like, oh, this came out of nowhere, right? Because there's other things that Dany on the show, her turning mad, there wasn't enough there. You felt like this was a twist that could have been a really awesome thing. Like, think about if the Red Wedding had not been set up properly. Like, say Robb had not been making bad decisions. He was in a very good spot politically, and then out of nowhere, you just get Walder Frey killing them for no reason almost, right? It's kind of how the storytelling was done here that makes this chapter so well, because you can tell this chapter has been set up for years, right? This event has been set up from book 1. It's been foreshadowed from this to this. Book 2, we get foreshadowing in the House of the Undying that this was going to happen. This has been marinated and slowly foreshadowed for a long time. Think about it. If you're marinating food, right, you want to let that, take time. You don't want to rush things. George does that perfectly for this chapter. It is the perfect culmination of foreshadowing, but yet we don't know what's going on completely, right? Where some things feel like they're too predictable, even when we're predicting Winds of Winter, right? When we do those videos, there's some things where when I'm predicting, I'm like, this seems very obvious. So would George do it? Because that's the problem, right? But that's the problem with him taking a while to release books. You have so much time to overanalyze things. When you look at the Red Wedding and why I think it works so well, if you think about the first 3 books and their release times and release dates, they all relatively came out fairly quickly one after the other, because George very much knew what he was going to do in those first 3 books. So you as a fan, you would read it the first time, maybe you reread it a second time if you really like the book. You didn't really have all this time to overanalyze, and there wasn't back then in the early 90s when these books were, or not early, late 90s. You didn't really, there was no YouTube. There was no like, hey, let's go on to Alt Shift X's video and is the Red Wedding gonna happen? There's been this foreshadowing. This is the feeling. I wish I could have been like alive in like I think this book came out like what 1998 or somewhere around there, and to be reading it with just no theories, nothing going on. For the show, for the most part, that's how it was. But the books do such a great job of it, and this is me really just giving George all the credit in the world because it generally is my favorite chapter in any literature, even though it is super dark, it's super depressing. It's not really it's not fan service, right? And that to me is the perfect essence of writing. You see so many like movies and shows now that take what Game of Thrones did or A Song of Ice and Fire, and they want that Red Wedding moment, but they don't know how to earn it. If we look at Marvel movies, if we look at Star Wars does this all the time. If you look at the Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, movies like that, they tried to get these big moments, these big twists, reveals. They were doing it all the time in those movies, but they didn't understand how to set it up. That's something George is very good at. So that is the video. I will tell you right now, if you want to see me really talking up the Red Wedding chapter and going a really in-depth analysis, I would strongly recommend going back in my channel, watching my Red Wedding analysis chapter, and actually I would watch the Catelyn analysis chapter before the Red Wedding, before I watch that video, because they're very in tandem with each other, and they are really good standalone videos next to each other. So I'll probably put that up in the cards, and then I would watch the Red Wedding one. Those two are very good videos to watch back to back. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching. Let me know, who do you guys want to see in next week's video? I couldn't really take a lot of your guys' suggestions from last week because I'm actually bulk recording. So the suggestions you left in that video and the Arya video, I will also take into account for next week's video or whatever. So yeah, thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.